among the lowest paid in California. A new deal announced by Mayor Kevin Faulconer and union leaders is designed to help rectify that. Taryn, start with the high points of this kind of creative deal, and we'll get to what they had to work around to get there.
Right. So it's a new 5-year contract, and the first 3 years are, well, officers have to pay out of pocket for things like equipment, uniforms, health benefits, and they do get some sort of allowance for that, but they still have to kind of pay a little bit out of their own pocket.
So that hits their take-home pay.
Right. So this increases their allowance, so they're still bringing a little bit more money home.
Okay. And let's talk about, we're going to get into Proposition B, which was kind of the hurdle they had to work around here. But before we do, we have Brian Marvel. He's the head of the Police Officers Union. Let's hear what he has to say about Proposition B in this.
The last 2 fiscal years is when the salary increases, and that's trying to keep it within the confines of what Proposition B, the citizens of San Diego, said no pensionable pay raise until after that. So that's when those will kick in. So within those 3 years, we found other ways and methods to actually increase take-home pay for the officers.
All right, so let's explain what he's talking about there. We've got a freeze in effect here for a couple of more years yet, right?
Right. So Proposition B basically froze any pensionable pay increases, I think, till the end of fiscal 2018. And so basically they want to increase their take-home pay, so you can't do that by raising their pay because of Proposition B. So they come up with this creative way to just increase their allowance so they're actually spending less out of pocket, bringing more home. But then once that freeze lifts, they can actually increase up to 3.3% each year for 2019 and 2020.
And that would add to their base of pensionable pay as you work through a long career.
With the additional of the allowances that they already have, able to have in the 3 years.
And as I understand, the deal is also weighted to officers with 8+ years experience. What was the thinking there?
Well, they were noticing the whole problem, kind of where this negotiation started coming up, was that they were noticing more officers were leaving for better pay elsewhere. That's kind of what kicked this all off. And Brian Marvel said that they noticed it was right around this 8 years is when they started seeing officers leaving, going elsewhere. Some were even retiring and then also getting jobs elsewhere. So he said the 8 years is they wanted to create an incentive to keep them here, and so it would make less other opportunities less attractive to them, like going to the sheriff's office or something that has maybe more allowed them to have more take-home pay.
All right, and Scott, give us a little bit of background how we got here, why we had such a thing as a Proposition B and freezing the union members' pay like this.
Well, obviously we had this pension scandal, and at the heart of the pension scandal was this giant payment we have to make every year to just keep the pension system up to speed with what it owes people who retire. And so to try to control that, they did 2 things. They cut off pensions for future employees, which I know Dave was a huge fan of. But then they also tried to cap pensionable pay, which, because you decide how much the city has to pay based on salaries, if you keep salaries steady, then the debt doesn't grow. And so they tried to cap pensionable pay. But the thing is, you can't cap pensionable pay as a directive. You have to actually negotiate each year with employees. But what Bob Filner, as mayor, was able to do, along with Kevin Faulconer, was get 5-year agreements from each employee group, and so that kind of kept everything steady. What they've done, though, is now create a new contract for the police to allow them to still conform to that, so that that pension bill doesn't get bigger. But like she said, it helps them
sweeten
make more
that take-home pay and figure out a way around that. Dave?
What I wonder is, where does this put San Diego in the grand scheme of things with other agencies, with other locations, other cities? In terms of compensation,
right.
I mean, are we? It sounds like we're just a little bit
are we significantly more competitive?
I mean, it's not really exactly clear. What Brian Marvel was just elaborating on is that what really is it eliminates that incentive. So there's not really that gap as much between the take-home pay of officers here and the deputies that they're seeing at the sheriff's office. So it kind of eliminates that incentive that they were saying was pushing them out the door a little bit.
In the sheriff's office, we should note that most of the good, experienced cops that get to 8 years or whatever level were going over to the sheriff's office.
Well, that was right where the discrepancy was, too, right? At the beginning, pays were pretty close, but it was at that point where our salaries turned out, or the city's salaries turned out to be lower so much.
Well, we're going to get into the numbers here and how many folks had gone, but here's what Police Chief Shelley Zimmerman had told KPBS about how many officers have left here in the past year.
If you take this fiscal year right now, and which started on July 1, we've had 16, a minimum, because you're not required to say why you've left our police department, but a minimum of 16 have said that they've left for other law enforcement agencies. 14 of the 16 have been local, and the majority going to the sheriff's department.
Okay, so they are, that is a magnet then, the Sheriff's Department, as we noted. So how many officers do we have now? Have you got those numbers there? And how many are called for in the budget?
I mean, when they announced this deal at the press conference on last Friday, they said it was 1,834 that they had on staff, but they were budgeted for 2013, I believe.
So almost another couple hundred officers we don't have right now.
Right, but actually even on Monday when they came on midday, Chief Zimmerman and Brian Marvel, actually they had calculated the numbers again, they lost 3 more. So it's actually, I mean, so it's still like you notice if you keep following, like every couple of weeks they get month or weekly updates, and it's a couple every now and then.
Okay. Now we noted how they've worked around Prop B and all. Is this going to be a problem down the road for city budgets or for this whole pension system? Are we kicking the can here by sweetening the compensation package now, or does that remain to be seen? There were some projections here. I think the mayor's office had worked out.
You know, the city is collecting more money, and so its annual budget is a lot easier to balance. But yeah, sure, it costs more money to pay people more, but they have protected it, and it seems pretty clear that they have protected it from increasing that pension bill, which I guess is nice.
You know, Dave, you were about to say something?
No, I wasn't, but I'll add that I'll add that, like Scott says, more money is coming in. You know, we just came out of a huge recession, and so you know that you could say that was an anomaly. You could maybe predict it's going to happen again.
But maybe we're back to more normal times, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And a lot of the city officials at the press conference were saying, like, this will not increase our pension liabilities. This is not going to increase it. And I think the way that they were, I mean, even though there is going to be a pensionable pay increase later on, there's some, in the calculation, it is assumed that it will go up once the freeze lifts, that pay will go up 3.3%. So they got the full increase of that. So that's kind of what they mean, that it won't affect it. But we will be hearing, City Council will be hearing a report on how this deal would affect the pension system.
All right, a couple seconds left here. What's the last step now? The deal isn't quite finalized, right?
No, and we're supposed to find out midday today if the police officers union does ratify it. So they're, I think, close to 1,800, as we mentioned, members are supposed to be voting today. The next step from that will be hearing that report to council, and then city council also has to approve it.
They got to
as well.
throw the holy water in the deal too. Okay, we'll be obviously following up with those stories. Well, Seattle has its Space Needle and St. Louis has the Gateway Arch. How about a huge landmark for San Diego's waterfront? A giant Ferris wheel, say, or a sky tower. Several unsolicited